Hello everyone, welcome to the new video. And in this video, we'll solve some more SQL queries using SQL breakdown structure. So if you are somebody who is new to my channel and doesn't know what is SQL breakdown structure, I will recommend go watch some videos. I'll post the link in the description where I have explained what is SQL breakdown structure and how you can break complex SQL query into smaller chunks and solve those smaller chunks to get the final result. So if you are ready, let's move to my computer where I'll solve next SQL problem using the SQL breakdown structure. I have logged into Data Lemur, which is my preferred platform to solve SQL queries. And today we are going to solve a question asked in Verizon, which is a popular telecom company in North America. And the question is called international call percentage. A phone call is considered an international call when the person calling is in a different country than the person receiving the call. What percentage of phone calls are international? Round the result to one decimal. Assumption: the caller ID in phone info refers to both the caller and receiver. So then they have given a phone calls table with 3 columns in it, and then phone info table with 4 columns in it, and then the example output. Okay, it's a very small question, so we'll start with our usual process of determining the keywords. So just 2 lines of question. A phone call is considered an international call when the person calling is in a different country than the person receiving the call. So keyword for me here is different, which means some kind of inequality will be there. This inequality could be could be using the inequality operator, or it could be using left join with null, just to show that okay, some record exists in one and does not exist in another. What percentage? Now percentage is another keyword and it denotes maths operation. So it basically needs a value which I have to multiply by 100 and then divide by total. So that's a typical maths operation of percentage. What percentage of phone calls are international? Round the result to one decimal and then round again, another maths operation, and I have to make it decimal x comma 1, right? This is all the information we have. Now it's a very basic logic that whenever you make a call, there is one person who is a sender or a caller, and then there is a one person who is a receiver. So you're calling a friend A is calling friend B, then friend A becomes the caller, and then friend B becomes the receiver. And as per the question, we have to identify all such calls where the caller and the receiver both lives in different country. So a pretty straight question, but we'll follow the SQL breakdown structure. So the keywords are already here. We have different, percentage and round, 3 main keywords we can get from the English question. Rest of the filler information is used to build the logic. The second part is determine the derived table. So as usual, I will write select star from phone calls and select star from phone info. 2 tables we have, right? And then as part of the next step, what we do, we write all the columns here. So select caller ID, receiver ID, and call type. Similarly, in the second table, we'll write all the columns here: caller ID, country ID, network, and phone number. Now, if you can recall, I said that we basically keep only those columns. If now we are in the next step, we will be converting these queries into derived table. And before that, if you can recall, I mentioned keep only the columns which are actually required to solve the questions, not all the columns. So in this case, caller ID definitely we'll keep because it's a joining column. Receiver ID also we'll keep because the receiver ID will also be joined from caller ID. If you see here the assumption, the caller ID in phone info table refers to both the caller and receiver. So we'll keep the receiver ID, but call time is not required. So maybe we can remove this column. Coming to this table, caller ID is required as a joining column. Country ID is also required because as per the question, we have to make sure that the caller and receiver both are from different country. So we can remove the network, we can remove the phone number. So my derived table is ready. I have one derived table here and another derived table here. So let me call it DT1 and I will join I will start with left join and then we can see, I think we can use inner join also here. But just to start with, let's use left join first so that we don't lose any records. dt1 dot caller id equal to dt2 dot caller id, and then we will do a similar join, and dt3 actually denotes receiver and dt2 actually denotes caller. We could have created one dedicated CTE for caller with this join and then another CTE with just dt1 and d3 join, right? We could have created it using that also, but this is also very simple, so we'll keep it like this. Here the only change will be, instead of caller ID, since dt3 represents a receiver, we will have receiver ID here. So if to give you more explanation, the phone info basically is a dimension table. It holds information of all the callers. That caller can be a receiver in some cases or an actual genuine caller. And phone calls is like a transaction fact table where it is just maintaining all the calls that are made, right? So phone info has information of all the customers, and phone calls actually has all the information of actual calls happening, right? So I think we are good with this, and as usual, derive table is done, join is done. What I will do is I'll just run a query to show you how the output looks like, and I will check some columns here. I'll pick some columns here, dt1 dot caller id, comma, dt2 dot country id I'll pick because I want to see what is the country for the caller, and dt1 dot receiver id, and I will pick country id from dt3. So I have a caller and the caller country, and then I have the receiver and the receiver country. So I'll just run this code and show you how the output looks like. So caller is calling from US and receiver is coming as null. So it means our receiver, okay, I'll just change it to dt3. Yes, my bad. So now I'll run the code again. So you see here, the caller is from UK as well as the receiver is from UK, and we don't want it because UK to UK is not an international call. But the next row you see from India, but the receiver was from UK. So this is an international call and we need such records, right? So what I will do is, since the trend is to create CTE, I'll create everything as a CTE, right? And then I will do from CTE1, and I need count star as total calls, and then I will use a very popular SQL pattern case along with the sum, because in this case, if you see, if the records are from the same country, like the UK and UK in this case, both callers and receivers are from the same country, I don't have to consider this record. But this record where caller is from India and the receiver is from UK, I have to consider it, right? So I will, if you see here, I have to apply some inequality. At the same time, I have to do some aggregation also to be used in my percentage calculation. So what I will use a very popular sum case pattern here, case when, and I will also give a better name here to avoid any confusion as caller country, and here as receiver ID as receiver country. I think now it makes more sense and easier to understand. So what I will do here is caller country is not equal to receiver country, then 1 else 0 end. Okay, so whenever those are not matching, I'll consider only those record as international calls. Okay, now what I will do is I'll just run this and show you how the output looks like. So I'll run this code and I see total calls 11 and international calls were 6. But in the output, I need percentage. So percentage, if I have to calculate what it will be, I will bring all this thing together. or let me don't cut it. I'll just keep it for now to show you how it looks like. Divide by total calls. I could have created a derived table and use it, but then it would have been one more derived table and could have created some confusion for you guys. So this is my percentage, and for percentage I have to multiply it by 100 also, right? So this is the value and I will multiply it by 100.0, because if I don't, then what will happen? This is integer, we know 6, and this is integer, we know 11. So 6 divided by 11, and if I just multiply it by 100, the output will be integer into integer divided by integer, and output will be integer, and I will lose some precision in my decimal value. So I'll just multiply it by 100.0, and then what I will do is round off 1 at the end, because it is mentioned that round the output to 1 decimal places, right? Now what I will do is I'll just run this code and show you the output. So this is the output: total calls 11, international calls 6, total percentage is 54.5, and in the output they want just the international calls percentage. So what I will do is I will remove these two columns and I will call it as international calls percentage, right? I will run this code, international calls percentage, and this looks good to me. Before I submit, I'll just go through whatever I have done just to make sure that there is no confusion. Okay, so as part of SQL breakdown structure, we identify the keywords. So different, percentage, and round. Three keywords we see from the question. Different basically means there is a check for inequality. We could have used inequality operator or a left join with null condition. We don't know at this point, but inequality, different generally means either of these two options. Percentage, basically it's a maths operation where you calculate some value, multiply it by 100, and then divide by the total value. And then round as a result to 1 decimal. So we have to perform another maths operation of rounding decimal x comma 1. So we started with the usual. After the keywords, we created a derived table. After the practice, once you have done a lot of practice, you don't actually have to create derived tables all the time. Automatically it will happen in your mind, because for me, I don't have to do it in this manner, but for the simplicity and explanation purpose, I'm creating it, like creating derived table every time, explaining each and every step, how I am thinking. But most of these things I could have done it in the mind and directly written a query also, right? So I created a derived table, listed all the columns first from the table, and then remove those columns which are not required. The assumption says the caller ID in phone info table refers to both the caller, so that's why the phone info table is 2 times. One is it is corresponding to the caller, the other time it is corresponding to the receiver. So we joined, and the joining condition was changed to join with the receiver ID, and this gives me everything: who is the caller, from which country is they calling, who is the receiver, and from which country is the receiver picking the phone. And then they want the percentage, so we switch to the mathematical operation of determining, okay, how many total calls were international, how many total calls were there, and then we rounded it into decimal 1 places. Let me submit the answer, and the answer is accepted. So you see here, right, I revisited the output also, because initially, if you remember, there were 3 columns in the output: total calls, international calls, and the percentage. And then I revisited the output. They only wanted the percentage in the output, so I removed those 2 columns. So you have to follow all these steps where you visit the answer again and see whether that is as per the expectations or not. There are different ways you could have done it. You could have created one single CT with all these things. There can be different solution also to this question, but using SQL breakdown structure, this is how I have done. If you think you could have taken a different approach, let me know your solution in the comments. We'll see that if that is a more optimized solution. But using SQL breakdown structure, this is how you can do this.